That's the first part of the question. The second is, what do we do for the people in Palestine so we're not going to hold them accountable and dangerous that, we didn't do what we have to do for them?
The Prophet ﷺ, in terms of like Palestine, and not even Palestine, but remember the difficulty to the Ummah of the Prophet ﷺ is not limited to Palestine, but it's east and west that the Ummah of the Rasul ﷺ is suffering, and it's been suffering since the day every single one of us was born. Like we're in an age where, like, some of us were born, quote unquote, in the 70s and you saw Afghanistan, and in the 80s and you saw Afghanistan, and the 90s and you saw Iraq, and we've seen Yemen, we've seen the Sham, we've seen, and in all of that we've seen Palestine and Palestine and Palestine and Palestine, the consistency of tribulations inside of that blessed and holy land. But that kind of, we've been born into, it's like they say that the people in Gaza, as an example, there's a generation now, all they know is that concentration camp that's called Gaza. They don't know anything beyond that, You get the point? So there's a sort of a mentality or a worldview that is born out of these sort of extreme conditions that not the Israelis have put them in, but the world has put them in. And the most guiltiest of all is people from this land. This here, the land in which all of us are in and basking in, they're the ones who created the situation in the first place, And so that is the reality. But then, whatever. What does religion say to us? The Prophet says, for an example, he said, "Man ra'a minkum munkara falyughayyir biyadihi." Now, any one of you see evil, change it. That's the first thing. And that change it for yughayyir means now there has to be intent. There has to be an intent. How can we change it? How can we make things better? And note, you have no independent capacity to change or make things better. That is from God. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it. And Allah ta'ala has a sunnah of how he does it. And he announces, وَلَا تَجِدَ فِي سُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَبْدِيلًا. And you find no alteration in the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the first, and so the intent. So how then do you change it? فَيُخَيِّرْ بِيَدِهِ. He says with the hand. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says. What do you mean by with the hand? Physical force. War. That's what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says. Okay? And who is he speaking to? That's important. He's speaking to people who have the machines of state at their disposal. You read it? They're the machines of state. Because next man thinks, wow, Shuf, the Rasul said this. Next man, like from Granby Street or whatever, like, what did the Rasul said? Nah, the Rasul ain't speaking to you. You ain't going to change nothing. You're not. So, Danny Khalas, when you start thinking about the reality of it, that's not how change comes about. You read it? That the affair is far greater than that, Yani. So you need the machines of state at your disposal. That's one of the duties of statehood. To change through force, to change through power, to change through war. So then what? فَيُغَيِّرْ بِلِسَانِ إِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ. If he's not that, the Rasul says, فَبِلِسَانِهِ. Then with his tongue. Look, he didn't say to speak out. He says change it with your tongue. The key is to change. Who changed it with the tongue? Ulama. It's the ulama. They're the ones who have weight that when they speak, people listen. Remember, that's how it once was. Yet it diminishes somewhat in the age in which we live in. وَإِلَّا, then if it diminishes with the ulama, then it's no longer existent. You get the point? Don't think like, the point is, you can, whatever Facebook posts or Twitter tweets, what's called X now, isn't it? Or whatever it is, yani, whatever that be, you ain't changing it, yani. Yani, sure, because change has a sunnah. So, then what? لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ. Then with your heart. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. It has two meanings. What do you mean ذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ? One, the first meaning, that's the weakest of faith. What's the point? لَقْذِفَنَّ اللَّهُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمُ الْوَهْنَ. Allah's cast weakness into our heart. We're weak. Like that's just like hold up, yani. We're weak, yani. We're not who we once were as an ummah. We're weak, and there are reasons for weakness. So if there's anything to do, let's understand what the reasons why we're weak and get to business and becoming strong. That is important. So that's a meaning. Ad'af al-iman, that's the weakest of faith. So the other meaning, not ad'af, the Imam said there's alif there. Ad'af al-iman. Ad'af al-iman. What ad'af al-iman? That's a multiplicity of faith. That's the highest of faith. Because if you think about it, if you're able to change a situation with your heart, you're greater than the one who can change it with the tongue. You're greater than the one who can change it with what? With the hand, isn't it? In short, they say that day the mahal of the awliya, that last meaning there. That's the mahal of the awliya, those who their heart they can exact change in and of itself. And it was the reality of it, Nasallahu salam al afiyah, first thing, ilallah, take it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the first, because man go shout, yani. A man hasn't raised their hands yet. Man hasn't stood in tahajjud yet, yani. Man hasn't cried in tahajjud yet, pleading upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring faraj for our dear brothers and sisters inside of Palestine. That's your first port of call. Shame that you would go to man and protest to man where you've not protested and stood in front of God. How then would Allah Ta'ala look upon that type of slave, Jalla Jalaluhu wa Ta'ala Ta'azamatu? So if there's any protest, and this is not negating people who want to go and protest in the streets, it's not negating that. But first, let's march to God, yani. Let's let's have these mass vigils of tahajjud, petition